We're now shifting our focus to Greenland. It is the largest island in the world, more than 3 times the size of Texas, but its location makes it a very tough place to live and work. It has a population of less than 60,000. I think that's a little more than 10% of Staten Island, and more than 80% of it is covered in ice. So interesting stuff, but why are some investors now suddenly starting to take a closer look at the country? Let's ask Paul Saffo. We've been talking to Paul regularly this year about his research on investment potential in the Arctic. Paul is the managing director of Foresight at Discern Analytics, where he provides investment research on global trends to corporate and government clients, and he joins us now live from Stanford University. Paul, always good to see you. The last time we were talking about the Arctic, we were talking really about Russia and some trade routes there and some shipping routes. Let's talk about Greenland now. Few people think about it. I think it tends to make headlines when there's sort of environmental news going on, but this now, there have been headlines over the last few months about finding oil under Greenland.
Yeah, in fact, Greenland is surrounded by a fair amount of oil. The USGS estimates that they have about 20 billion barrels of undiscovered oil reserves, and there's been some drilling last summer that was disappointing, but all the big oil companies are actively bidding as part of the process.
All right, let's talk about, what companies are actively involved here. Now, obviously, the government of Greenland is, I would think that they are excited, but they're also taking some precautions, right, to prevent a sort of a Gulf oil type spill.
Oh, absolutely. The background here is Greenland is still part of the Denmark Commonwealth, but it will gain its independence when it can demonstrate financial independence. Right now, the Danish government subsidizes Greenlanders to about $11,000 a person a year. So they have a strong incentive to develop their oil and mineral resources, but also at the same time, they have a very strict environmental ethic, and they're moving very cautiously to make sure that oil and ice don't mix.
Paul, let's start again. Let's talk a little bit about oil in Greenland. Hard to get to, obviously a difficult place to work, but there are a number of companies that are interested. We talked about the government just a moment ago. I mean, I guess that Greenland may have as much oil as Libya at some point in terms of production, but when do we start to see that? One company, British Cairn Energy, I guess, is sort of leading the charge, but how long will it be until we actually see them producing oil?
Well, Cairn's experience last year is an indicator of the challenges. They were drilling along western Greenland in an area known as Iceberg Alley. In fact, that's probably where the iceberg that hit the Titanic came from. They got in 2 wells, an incomplete third. They were interrupted by protesters who climbed into the well, and when they announced their results of their effort last October, I believe their stock dropped by about 7%, and they took a charge off of $250 million. So exploiting this oil, it's speculative, it's risky, it's about as environmentally, climatically challenging as you can get. It's going to take new technology. And
the government, I understand, is splitting 50% of the profits from whatever is found, which, how does that rate compare to other countries for companies?
Well, we live in a world of sovereign oil, that all the oil from here on out is owned by countries and not companies. And Greenland is doing a good job of managing this, better than a lot of other resource-rich countries. And their percentages are comparable to other countries.
Paul, I got to talk about the rubies. And other things. I just want to focus on the rubies, but let's talk about the other things outside of oil that they're potentially finding there.
So you have oil offshore and onshore, especially as the ice retreat. You've got, this is pure Indiana Jones meets James Bond. Uranium, gold, zinc, lead, and even gem quality rubies. Scary speculative stuff, little companies, but it sounds like quite an adventure.
Sounds like a lot of people are interested, all right, but a lot of risks, obviously. Iceberg Alley, as you were saying, up in that region. Paul, it's so great to speak to you again. You always have interesting stuff to talk about in places that we often don't talk about. All right, Paul Saffo joining us today. He's Managing Director of Foresight at Discern Analytics.